Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like you to imagine a world where everyone is in complete control of their financial situation. A world where everyone goes about every single financial decision they make with intention, resulting in a world where everyone is heading towards financial freedom. In this world, the requirement for state funding completely disappears. My name is Alex Cook, and in June of 2000, 20 years ago, I co-founded GCI with the intention of making this dream a reality. Now, for most people, their retirement fund and their group life cover forms the cornerstone to their financial plan. And this is therefore a reason why we focus on employee benefits, because we can have the biggest impact on the most amount of people. And this is also the reason why we decided to open up our complementary fund audits to non-clients as well as our clients. In this fund audit, every single aspect of your retirement fund is analyzed, where areas are identified that can be significantly improved to give you the biggest bang for your buck and for your employees' buck. Often the biggest impact can be made in those funds where there is a lack of independence. And the easiest way to identify a lack of independence is where your fund administration, your fund management, as well as your group life cover are all being done by the same company. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know you didn't come here to listen to me. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our senior accounts executive, Jaco, and together with him, his guests for today are Renee Naylor and Skulk Berger. This is a talk-only webinar facility. So you won't be able to interact live with the guests, but what I'd encourage you to do is ask as many questions as possible by clicking on the ask a question below. If you see someone else has asked a question that you really like, please vote that question to improve and increase the importance of that question that will be asked. And please also make use of the chat facility on the side. Jaco, over to you. Enjoy the webinar.
Thanks, Alex, and welcome everybody. Special word of welcome also to our friends from abroad, Steve and his team from New Direction, the biggest behavioral health company in the US, listening to us from Kansas City this morning there. Charles, the team from Neos Life in Sydney, welcome. Sonia and Byron from Boral in Australia, welcome. And of course to all our special South African guests. What a great way to spend a Thursday morning with all of you and our legendary guests, Skulk Berger and Renee Naylor. It's a privilege really, and I thank you for your attendance. I'd like to share a story with you. Many years ago, I was part of a rugby team called Transvaal. Nowadays they're called the Lions. I was very proud to represent such a successful unit. In 1993, we won every single cup on offer, including the Super 10, which is really the start and the culmination in the Super Rugby series we're watching on TV nowadays. See, there's some lovely pictures. Thanks, Don, for that one. I generally prefer pictures where I'm fully clothed and not surrounded by 20 naked men only wearing towels. But thank heavens for the audience, that picture is 25 years old. So I suppose it's okay. The bulk of that team went on to be part of the 1995 World Cup tournament, which we won for the first time. Both the Transvaal team and the Springbok team trained under Kitch Christie. And that really was the start of professionalism in rugby. It soon became apparent what the need were for true specialists in every single aspect of the team. A great example of this happened in the 1995 World Cup. All Blacks were scoring many tries, and there was a guy called Jonah Lomu stealing the show almost single-handedly, and really everybody was talking about him and all the tries he was scoring. Kitch went and did a bit of analysis of how they do the setup for that. And he quickly realized the All Blacks were throwing the ball deep into the line-out, sucking in the defense's loose forwards, getting some big guys peeling around to the 10 and 12 channel, and then creating space for Jono on the outside, who was a handful at the best of time. Our loose trio at the time was Francois Pienaar, Ruben Kruger, and we used Rudolf Stroile or Adrian Richter at 8. All fantastic players, of course, but none of them were really line-out specialists. Kitch immediately realized that we need a specialist at the back of the line-out. And that's exactly what he did. Under a barrage of criticism, he picked Mark Andrews out of position, since he was actually a lock, to play 8th man in the semi-final and the final of the World Cup 1995. He did this because Mark was a line-out specialist. and it worked. He foiled the complete platform of attack for the All Blacks, so they had to change the way they played and how they structured their attack on the day in the final. So we're all very proud of how we tackled and how we defended against Jonah on the day. But what we often don't see behind the scenes is that Kitcher's strategy worked. What we did is take away their main platform of attack because he adapted, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation. Speaking of specialization, I remember our team doctor very well, Dr. Frans Verster. Dr. Frans was a fantastic guy and an excellent doctor. He soon became well known as a South African sports doctor and also went on to become the Springbok team doctor at the time. Before every game, Dr. Frans would strap my ankle, and he knew exactly how to do it so that I could focus 100% of my attention on my job on the field. I often got asked then, Jaco, can't you just strap your own ankle, or can one of the other teammates do it perhaps? And I said, sure, I suppose I can if I wanted to go for a morning jog or play touch rugby on the beach. However, when I'm out there representing a professional outfit, I cannot afford even 10% of my attention worrying about my ankle strapping. I need all of my focus on the job I need to do for that team. So Doc Frans really was the right person with the right skills at the right time. So why am I telling you this? In rugby and in business, there's really three things that will set you apart from your competition. Working with professionals who have a specialist knowledge in a particular field, using the right tools at the right time, and then their willingness to adapt in order to grow. So let's break this down a bit. A few years ago, I was involved in a new business tender, and the client or the company owner was very good mates with his personal financial advisor, who was not an employee benefit specialist. This put us at a bit of a disadvantage because it's always difficult competing against a strong relationship. But it was also frustrating at the same time because I knew what a great tailor-made plan we could put in place for this particular employer group. I also knew he was an avid tennis player. So I started talking to him about that. And I asked him, how often he played. And he said, well, he plays every Wednesday and sometimes Saturday, sometimes Sunday. He just loved it. He plays every time he gets, every opportunity he gets. And then I asked him, if he was any good. And he said, yeah, no, he was pretty good. He's won the club championship at his club in his age group a couple of times. And so, yeah, he thought he was okay. So I said, well, that's very interesting. But then I had to ask him, can you beat this guy? And of course he laughed and he said, no, of course I can't beat this guy. I mean, he trains 8 hours a day. All he does is play tennis. It's his job. I just mentioned almost like our job, 8 or more hours a day doing employee benefits, and it's all we do. I didn't really need to say much more from there. I think he got where I was going with it. But I did ask him one more question. I said to him, if he had a very important doubles match to play and he had to pick a partner and he could pick between me and Roger, who would he pick? It was never going to be me, was it? If he wanted to win, that is. So that just makes sense. You need to put the best possible team in place if you want to win, because that way everybody wins. You give your entire team, your company, the best possible opportunity to achieve the most desirable outcome. Now, if we look at the right tools for the right time, what often happens in business is businesses look for ways to increase revenue and reduce expenses, which is nothing wrong with, of course. They should be doing that, as long as it doesn't reduce the effectiveness of their own speciality. In my example I used previously, if Doc Frans, for example, decided to make some extra bucks on the side by manufacturing his own tape or plaster, and it was of inferior quality, no matter how well he did his job, the plaster won't last and he would become completely ineffective. Timing is also very important. If he had launched that inferior tape nowadays, maybe it would have worked, because these guys today aren't as fast as we used to be, of course. Just kidding, I wish. No, but the point I'm trying to make is Doc Francis' expertise was his strapping technique. And no matter how good that technique is, if he's using inferior materials, his job is going to become ineffective. So an essential part of the success recipe of any company is not only having the right people, but also using the right tools at the right time. Now, the next aspect you have to look at is the willingness to adapt in order to grow. So how do you do that? And that's really also a 3-step plan that every person has to do. Firstly is audit. Look where you stand. There's no ways you can improve anything if you don't even know where you are at the moment. So no matter how good, how bad, audit your current processes so we can see where you stand. Secondly, we need to identify loopholes and some shortfalls, and then we've got to improve on them. And then you've got to continue to develop them further. But of course, this is not a once-off scenario. You have to keep on doing this. Once you've audited, once you've improved, once you've developed, you need to audit again, because why? The environment around you keeps changing. And if you don't keep auditing and looking where you are, you set yourself in trouble. So just think about strategies in rugby and how it changed. The way Skalk and his team played in 2007 to win the Rugby World Cup is very different the way Rene and Russie's team went about it now in 2019. The story about the adapting to change I told about Mark Andrews also speaks to this. Why is this? It's because you're not the only one who has a vote in this. Our clients, our competitors, referees, lawmakers all start to think differently. And if we don't start to think differently, we'll be left behind. A few companies come to mind. We all know the Kodak story. They had it, but not changing left them in the dust. BlackBerry is another good example. They wanted to keep their entire community within the BBM network. And then WhatsApp came in and swooped it all up. And who can forget all the video rental stores like Blockbusters? They got annihilated by Netflix and other on-demand streaming services for that matter. Now, here's the kicker. They were not bad companies. In fact, they were phenomenal companies. The decisions they took when they started those businesses were really good decisions. We've all made decisions that worked for us for a while, but then things changed. And we often fail to see and act upon those changes, especially when it comes to business. So I'm not saying they made bad decisions. There just came a point in time where those decisions were no longer right because the world had changed. And because they did not, they were left behind. So let's go back to why we're here today. The South African retirement statistics isn't a very good picture at this point in time. Only 56% of South Africans have a formal retirement plan in place or some form of retirement plan in place. Only 6% of us are able to retire safely and securely. Now, as frightening as that may sound, I find it more frightening that 50% of us think we're okay. That means 50% of us, or 44%, sorry, are actually wrong. And these are the people we need to look at and try and assist. As Alex mentioned further, our goal is to fix that. And I'm very proud to say that we've been doing that. If you look at the audit we did on our entire client community, you'll see that the expense ratio for clients on the GCI, in the GCI community, has an expense ratio of 32% less than the industry benchmark. This means that we are able to add a significant additional portion of member contributions towards retirement savings. So without having to pay more, without increasing their contributions, we're able to increase the amount of money they're putting towards savings. So how do we do this? Because of our complete independence and specialist knowledge in employee benefits, we have developed a very unique audit process. We've identified 4 pillars which forms the beacons of every single fund: the platform, the investments, the risk, and the benefit consulting. We then take data from each of these elements and we feed it into a mathematical model where it's benchmarked and assessed against its peers, is tested for relevance and suitability to your specific employee demographics. Then we come up with a result or a number. That number is we call an efficiency ratio or a fund score, and that could be, for example, 60%. We then identify shortfalls and see where there's room for improvement, and then we demonstrate the increased score once we've done with the adjustments. All of this is geared to ensure that the maximum amount of employee contributions are going towards savings and is not wasted on fees or expensive insurance costs. As I say, the proof is in the pudding. So what I did, I just took a dipstick test of 10 audits randomly selected that we've done over the last few months. And there's some very interesting results that came out from that. If we take those 10 employer groups, we could potentially add an additional 1.3 million rand per annum to member savings. On those 10 employer groups, we've reduced employer expenses by 1.1 million rand per annum. And if I extrapolate this over 20 years, it means 62 million rand that we've added into those employees' retirement funding. We've saved those employer groups 52.5 million rand over 20 years, straight off their bottom line, without changing any benefits or reducing any cover. So we also look after 4.7 billion rand of client funds managed by our own asset managers. And I also want to tell you about our very unique referral program. Here we enter into a profit share agreement to anybody who refers business or clients to us, and you continue sharing in the revenue generated by that client as long as they remain in our books. As you can imagine, so far it's been fruitful for all who's been involved. While we're doing the interviews, you'll see a request an audit button below our faces. If you want to refer us to someone, please just click on that button, give us the details. I'll give you a shout and we'll get in touch. So looking at the makeup of a team, and you look at these three guys that will appear on screen pretty shortly when my internet allows it. How'd you like to pick them? All specialists in their fields, remarkable players, currently the number one team in the world. I'd surely pick them. In a nutshell, we do what we do best, so you can do what you do best. So why did we invite Renee and Skalk to talk with us today? They are both such excellent examples of how the specialist right tools and adapt to change principles are applied in practice. Skalk, Renee, welcome. I'd like to welcome you onto the stage now. Don will let you in. And thank you so much for joining us today. Both of you have had such remarkable stories to tell, and I wish we had time to explore all of your many accolades. But let's start with the most obvious one. You are both Rugby World Cup champions. You've both been involved in numerous of them. And I think I speak for all of us when I say congratulations to both of you. You've really made us so proud, not only the last year or in 2007, but throughout your careers. It's really been phenomenal to follow both of your careers and endeavors. So while we wait for the internet to allow us on, my Skalk.
How's it?
Welcome.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the call you've sent us in Joburg.
Yeah, lucky it's a beautiful day in Cape Town. As you can see, I'm sitting outside. Last week, this was not possible. The rain was coming from all angles. It's only Cape Town can. Big wind, big rains. But luckily, we sent it off to you guys. I hear it's freezing up there. So even predicting snow, they said this week. Yes,
that'll be quite awesome. I know my 5-year-old boy said he can't wait to see snow, but I told him not to get his hopes up. Anyway, so yes, Scott, while we're waiting to get Renee on, I just want to start by mentioning when you started your career in 2003, you burst into the senior scene. I mean, I couldn't believe how such a young guy can have such an impact on a rugby field, especially amongst the forwards. I mean, we had young backline players come through and have a huge impact, but you just had a massive impact when you got on the field. And I was talking to my good mate Tinus Delport, who might also be listening in from England, your teammate in the 2003 World Cup. And I said to him, this guy is amazing, but it's pity he's never going to last, is he? Because you can't play like that and your body lasts. It turns out I was right, but 86 steps later somehow.
Yeah, unfortunately, it never lasts. Like you burst on the scene, and the journey was quite crazy for me when I finished. So I finished with a cricket contract in 2002, and that's actually the first time where I met Renee in 2002. So she was involved in the junior ranks, and I was playing there at Western Province Juniors under 2002, and she was my first Western Province physio. So if you're young, you don't hardly ever go to the physio room. By the end of the career, it was a completely different story. I mean, every single off hour I had besides between trainings, I used to go lie on Renee's physio bed, and you try and patch up a rig that's not allowed to run around anymore. So, yeah, I mean, when you're young, you just fly around, and I guess the one thing you've got youth, and you don't have any bad experiences, you know. So you start off by, you know, taking bigger and bigger risks. And when you're playing well, the bigger the risk you take, you know, the higher the reward. You know, unfortunately for me, I've come off a few times. I came off second best. So, but it was a wonderful journey for me. And, you know, to get an opportunity to play is such a, you know, professional sport. Is, you know, such a unique opportunity. And my biggest driver was, let's not waste this. So you're going to get one shot at this, and let's give it horns. And, you know, I think by the way I played, I showed that I didn't hold back much.
Brilliant. Absolutely not. And yeah, it was interesting for me what you mentioned. I'm sure you know Renee quite well, because you must have spent quite a lot of time on her table, I'm sure. Renee,
we went through a phase where I was spending more time with Renee than I was spending with my wife, which was a little bit worrying.
Hi, Yaku. Hi, Scala.
Hi, Renee.
Yes, all I can say is that from the beginning, I mean, I was a physio for Scala when he left matric, when he started at Western Province under 19. And what is the difference? He had a lot more hair then compared to now. And definitely spent a lot more time with me at the end of his career than in the beginning. In the beginning, he was just going on the field, fit and ready all the time.
Oh, yes. No, we remember that. Renee, coming back to you. So you've been involved in 3 World Cups, and the last one, of course, we won. So can you tell me, from your opinion, what do you think was the biggest differentiator between those 3 World Cups? Is it the coaching? Is it the staff? Is it the management? What do you think is the biggest thing that changed from 2011 to 2019?
So Yaku, I think it's important to say that I think with all 3 World Cups, you all go into it expecting to win because you're working towards it. You have the plans in place and you have the dreams of this is where we're going. I think for myself, the difference was that we were planning very long in advance. I mean, it was literally 614 days that the preparation started for the 2019 World Cup. Mm-hmm. And it was a very transparent process. And the difference, I think, I started with the Springboks in 2008, and the system that was very successful with Jake White in 2007 and 2008 would never have worked if we had tried to apply that in 2019.
Of course.
So we worked from a very hierarchy. I mean, Skalk would know, you know, your status was how many caps you had, how old you were, how many games you played, you know, where you could sit on the bus. It was a Donnie Craven era. You need to know his name of his dog if you want to be a Springbok. It was a very different culture that suited the team. It was a very homogenous team at the time. Whereas in 2018, when I came back into Springbok setup with Rassie, it was a very diverse group. Mm-hmm. And you know, as you've mentioned in your specialist in their field, you needed specialists, very strong leadership. Leadership was key to actually, with this diverse group, to bring them together to a common vision and to be aligned that this is where we're going and this is how we're doing it. And I think the fact that the leadership was very transparent in the beginning, saying, listen, our key goals is to win this World Cup. We're going to do it by having depth and experience and by transforming. Transformation, depth, experience were the 3 key factors we're taking with us. And we all have to be aligned and you all have to have that mindset. It was not just talent. You Correct. Couldn't ride on your talent. And I think, you know, the big change, which you mentioned about adapting to change, was, you know, you couldn't stay in the past. You'd probably struggle. You needed to adapt to the change that were taking place.
I also think, Renee, haven't you found that, and you, Skalk, I've always seen as people don't often understand what a strong person you need to be a coach of a team of winners like that, because nobody plays at that level that isn't a winner in himself. And I mean, obviously everyone has their, especially experienced guys, have their own opinions and their own ways of wanting to do things. You need one guy who's generally the coach who needs to put this all together and make sure you get the best out of everyone. Okay. Skalk, there's a question. Sorry, Renee.
No, no, no. I just want to say that is probably the most powerful thing, is that your head coach, he has to bring people together. Because if you have the top specialists in all the fields, but if the head coach doesn't drive the process and the mindset and get everyone together and aligned, then it won't work. And particularly if you are a diverse group,
Yes.
with coming from completely different backgrounds and having completely different journeys, and now coming together in this team, as it happens in lots of business setups and in lots of team setups, that leadership is really powerful and important.
Hey, Yaku, just Renee, on that, I think it's so incredibly important. I've obviously played in a couple of few World Cups, 4 of them. Renee's done 3, but the ones that were successful, yes, there's a lot of things that goes on in a World Cup. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. But I think the common denominator between all the ones that were successful in South Africa, and maybe this is unique to South Africans, is that there was clear communication up front. Everyone knew exactly what was expected of them. And then it was up to that individual to deliver on whatever he was promised to deliver. So whether it is being a super sub, whether it is being the leader of the midweek team or the so-called B team. I remember Kitch Christie in 95 had the green and the gold squads, or whatever it was, the A and the B team pretty much. In 2007, also with Jake White, there was a clear set difference between the starting lineup and these not starting. The sort of second team at the World Cup got a chance to play against Tonga, and they actually battled a little bit, and they brought on the big guns, and they sort of just proved why they're the better guys. And 2019 was no different. I know the South African public was calling for the heads of Willie Leroux and whoever else they were. Faf's head was called on, but Rassie Erasmus stood by his word and said up front, you are here to do a job for us. And no matter what your little responsibility, if it's off the field, if it's a social responsibility, you had to deliver on that promise. And I think that's a common denominator in all 3 victories we've had so far.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Skalk, I got a question from Paul in the audience. He wants to know how your family supported you as a youngster. He's seen so many youngsters' passion for sport being ruined by overzealous parents. Your dad, obviously, also being a legendary Springbok, maybe helped a bit, but does that also put pressure on you?
I think it does. I mean, I think it's, me, and I've got a brother that's a year younger, and I've got a sister that's quite a few years younger. But I guess I just was lucky. I had the right personality. I'm sort of oblivious to everything that goes around. I'm not completely stupid to it. So you notice it. But I was always one of those kids that just want to get out and run after the ball or play cricket. And I think when I was younger, especially, cricket was probably my first love. Loved cricket so much, and I always playing rugby. I'm 6'3", weighing 100 and something kilograms at school. You're always going to be playing rugby, and your Afrikaans heritage, you've got no real choice. But I think my dad was very helpful through many phases. It's nice to have someone that you can actually, that's been there, done that. Although in a different era, but it's nice to have him as a sounding board. And he sort of bounced certain things. And although the game we played, if you look at our videos, even when I started in 2002 till when I finished in 2019, it's a completely different game. Again, if you rewind to when my dad was in his prime in the late 70s and mid 80s, it's also a completely different game. But the basics of the game and the feelings you have while you're running around, it's still the same. And then you go through a phase when you're a little bit older and you've sort of made up your mind on what your journey is. And then as a player, when you get older, you realize you've got to, you either stick to what you've been doing and you burn out and finish at 28, or you reinvent yourself and sort of move forward and say, listen here, okay, I've had a few injuries here. I can't chuck myself around. I've got to pick my battles. Not every battle is there to be won. Some of them you've just got to break even and said, okay, I'll survive that one. And you add an extra element to your game, through leadership, through your skill set. But it's interesting. I did a talk at one of the schools here in Cape Town, and everyone was hell bent on producing the next Springbok. They want to produce more Springboks, and it's such a hard thing. I think the statistic out there is 0.032%, and we're in a room of 600 guests, and I was the only Springbok there. So the chances of making it is so slim. So often when I think back, when I was at school, I just wanted to play and enjoy it. And if I ask my kids what they want to do, they want to play around and run around with their mates. So I think sometimes, misguided, pressure that you put on your kid, it's not worth it, because he wants to enjoy it. There's going to be enough scope when they're older where you can actually see, listen here, he's got proper talent. And what do? You work harder. You make sure you've got a skill set, that you finish school with a skill set good enough to play professional rugby or club rugby or whatever that might be. The only schoolboy I ever seen that finished school that had a skill set and luckily was big enough to play a test match was Francois Steyn. He was just a complete freak. He was unbelievable. All of us, the rest of us, especially like me, we had to fill in our bodies. When I left school, it looked like I had another 20 centimeters to go to grow into my head. It was this massive head on this like a lollipop head. So it's an interesting concept because very seldom is there there is a story, and probably more in individual sports where someone a father sets out that Tiger Woods story or the Williams sisters story where they set out and they're gonna make the next best thing. And I think you need a specific personality to conquer that, because that's a lot of pressure. And I remember reading the Andre Agassi book, and he was in a similar pressure where his dad sent him off to the Nick Bottleri tennis school, and he hated tennis. He hated hitting tennis balls. It was only until much later in life, where he sort of worked through his issues, where he actually started enjoying competing and playing tennis. And I don't want that for my kids. No thanks.
Sure. Interesting comment there, Schalk, you made. You said somebody also once told me you were a phenomenal cricketer. Batsman, bowler, what did you enjoy?
No, I did both. I was a bit of an all-rounder. So opened the bowling a fair bit, but predominantly first changed bowler, little seam-up outswingers, and then used to bat right up top of the order, so in between the first three. So absolutely loved it. I reckon the IPL came a bit too late. Otherwise, I would have been lost to. I'll be lost to rugby. But yeah, I finished school with a cricket contract, and then, sort of started playing rugby on the side. And then actually, Jake White came to watch a Stellenbosch University game and picked me up, and then drafted me straight out of the doldrums straight into the S under 21 squad in 2002. And then actually, we were the catalyst of winning that under 21 World Cup against Australia at Ellis Park. And all of a sudden, Western Province comes knocking at your door saying, listen, what are you doing? I said, no, I'm playing cricket. And they said, no, but you've got to change. And back then, my little cricket contract was like $600 a month. And then all of a sudden, the rugby contract was a lot more lucrative. And as my studies wasn't going too well, I didn't really have much other option but to take the rugby contract.
Fantastic story. Renee, you've also got a very amazing story. I mean, if I look at your history, the first team you assisted as a physiotherapist, you were working out of a container. Is that right? You didn't even have proper lighting. The guys had to put the car lights on for you to work. And then to come from that to the professionalism of a World Cup winning team, I mean, it must just be, I'm hoping you write a book for us, because I'd love to read that entire journey. Can you tell us, we're talking a bit about specialists here. For me, what's interesting, I can imagine in those container days, you probably would have played psychologist, stand-in mom, fitness trainer. You're probably doing just about everything physical that the guys needed from that support kind of system. Oh, that came out wrong. from a medical support system, let's put it that way. But it's very different in the professional arena. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Jaco. So when I started out at my club rugby Silver Tree days, you were everything. You advised the guys, look, a chip roll and a burger is not the best thing to eat just before you kick off. You basically help the coach with a warm-up. You strap the guys. You work out of your container. You stress before the game starts because you're thinking, gosh, if there's a serious injury, I'm going to have to get this guy to a hospital. I'm going to have to get an ambulance here. I'm worried about stitching, because you're the only medic at the pitch. Yeah. At the time, I was studying and doing my postgraduate studies, my master's and my research. So for me, it was so exciting because I was now applying everything I'm studying, on the pitch. Yes, and I got 200 Rand for every game. So it was I was good going. And my family was super excited when I finally got a break at Western Province. That's when I met Scala, and I came there on a Monday evening. There was no facility. Now they've got the HPC, the High Performance Center. At that stage, we also worked out of a little room at the back there on a Monday evening. We used to come in on a Monday evening, and there were loads of players. There were just players all over from all age groups coming out to Bellville. And that was my start. And I must say, I didn't think at that time I want to be the Springbok physio. That was never I'm working towards that. For me, I was really enjoying what I was doing. I watched a game in 95 at Newlands. I went with a friend to watch one of the World Cup games, and I sat there and I thought, gosh, it must be amazing to be the physio on the pitch and in the change room, because I mean, I enjoy rugby. And that's where it sort of, I thought the first opportunity I get to work with the club, I'm going to take it. And I was lucky that, I stayed a number of years at Province, eventually got to the Currie Cup and the Stormers, and got the break in 2008 to join the Springboks, which was really the pinnacle for me, because I didn't think the Springboks would take a female. That was basically when I got to the top at Province, I thought, well, this is where I'll stay, because the Springboks, they will be scared to take a female. Western Province was, in my opinion, probably more progressive, that they had female physios. There was Helen Molson, that was before me, and I didn't think it would happen at the national level. So that was a bold move for them, and I felt a huge responsibility to go there and be successful. I've just put my head down and worked as hard as I can. The guys teased me and said, Bucky's Berta's not going to listen to you with your balance and your core exercises, that you want to do your classes. I mean, Scala will remember the physio ball exercises I came with. And I was quite fiery then. I mean, I've calmed down in my old age, but that's it. It was very fiery. No, they have to do it. You must do these exercises. But it was a long journey. Sometimes I think that physios and young people don't realize that. They think that you just get to be the Springbok physio. It took me 10 years before I actually got the job in 2008. 10 years of working in rugby.
It's an unbelievable story. And I see the question also came through from the audience. Did you always want to be a physio, Renee?
Yes, that was something I decided when I was probably 16 or 15 years old. So I'm very blessed that I actually still enjoy the profession. 27 years later, I'm still enjoying physiotherapy. But I was very young, and my dad broke his leg. He played a soccer game for the church, some community soccer game, and he broke his leg and he had to go for physio. And that's when I was exposed to it. I was about 15 or 16. And I thought, gosh, this is amazing, because it's not so bloody like, being a doctor. I wanted to do something in medical. I mean, I actually knew very little. If I think back, I knew nothing about the profession, but it was my only choice. I left school thinking that I must be a physio. This is my path, and I must say I'm really grateful and lucky that I still enjoy it, and I think that's probably the secret.
Fantastic, Simone. Thank you for your comment. Yeah, she's saying you're such an inspiration to women. I don't know if you can see it all around. Skulk, you've got such amazing stats. If I have to read them all, it'll take up all the time. But I just want to mention a few. I mean, 86 tests. You're one of only two South Africans who's played 4 World Cups, Victor Matfield being the other one. You won the Under-21 World Cup in 2002, and then you were straight from there included in the Rugby World Cup 2003. RB Rugby Player of the Year, of the World, age 21. I mean, that's just phenomenal. Then you had a terrible neck injury that needed cervical fusion. You had a life-threatening bout of bacterial meningitis 2013. Then you won the Laureus Award for International Sporting Comeback of the Year. Just amazing. All this tremendous achievements. So I have to ask you, 2015, we lost our opening game in the World Cup against Japan. How the hell did that happen?
What happened? I can't remember what happened in 2015. To be honest, I mean, it wasn't a great moment. Obviously, Ireland showed us as the number 2 ranked team in the world. They can lose against Japan as well, as they just thankfully people have forgotten about the Springboks, except everyone who was at Brighton. But I don't think we were not clear in that whole build up to the World Cup. Unfortunately, there was nothing wrong with the work ethic from Heineke before the planning. Every time there is a World Cup with the Springboks, we tend to put in so much effort to compare to the other sports codes, because I think even more relevant now, we don't have control of our squad. If you think of last year's World Cup winning squad, there was a couple of injuries, so Trevor Nakani and Jesse Creel, there was a group of 33. 16 of those players are now based abroad, and that number is only going to increase after this season. So maybe it goes up to 20. So that's what makes it so hard for us to be competitive in between World Cups. But then in a World Cup last week, Renee might correct me if I'm wrong, they spent 22 weeks together, was it? It was 22 weeks or 24 weeks. And that's the only time that you as a Springbok coaching staff and medical staff actually got hold of this player. So you know what shape they're in, what are they battling with. Other than that, you know, according to the World Rugby regulations, you can only use them the Monday before a test match on the weekend. So then we've got 4 days of preparation with them, and then you've got to try and get this team to play against the All Blacks, which by all accounts spend the whole year together, you know. So our build-up was weak, partly because we started losing games that we were targeting to win, and then the plan changed. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, World Cups for South African works where there's a set plan. This is the team, and this is the guys who are not playing. And I remember the problem with us, everyone's so ambitious. It's a World Cup. Everyone wants to start. That there was a bit of animosity within the group. Everyone was almost like a trial match, and we've been involved in trial matches, and they're horrible because it's every man plays for himself. And if you look at the Japan game, that's essentially what we did. What it did do, though, is forced us to change the hand, and the power within the group shifted to the senior players, and we realized it's not going to be perfect because our build-up's been weak. But we've got a chance of getting this right. And like, you know, people forget, everyone mentions the Japan loss, but people forget that we lost 20 points to 18 against the greatest side of the modern era, the All Blacks, that hardly lost. I think they lost 5 test matches in 100 or whatever it was at the end. But like, we had a penalty right in front to win, and we got taken back for a neck roll by Victor. Unfortunately, it wasn't Victor's fault. It was just, he got called back with a touchy. If we would have won that 21 points to 20, all of a sudden you're playing the Wallabies, which by all accounts, I think we really had a good chance of winning. So we finished third in the World Cup, and I think if we beat Japan, we wouldn't have the necessary steps. There's a good story, though, on that Sunday. So obviously now we've lost. I mean, the whole Springbok team is in tears. I mean, it's crazy. It's hectic. I mean, it's a quiet change room. No one says anything. Now we're traveling. We were based in Eastbourne, which has got the oldest average age of any town in the UK. It's better known as the God's waiting room. And now we've got to travel, and the bus can only drive an hour and a half at a time, but we've got a 4.5-hour bus ride up to Birmingham, where we're playing Samoa at Villa Park, Aston Villa Stadium. So I now, as per usual, my recovery protocol involves a few beers and a couple of wines. So I pack in a little 6-pack of lagers, and I sit back left. That's why I used to sit back left, the ejection seat, everyone used to call it. So I used to sit in the ejection seat, because if your next seat in the bus from there is retirement. So we stop our halfway stop for lunch, and obviously by this time Heineke is having one-on-ones with everyone. But I can also spot the media manager walking from the front to from the bus, and everyone's just shaking their heads. So he worked like for half the team. I had like 4 beers, and then I had another 2 from our halfway stop to Birmingham. And he came to me last and he said, "Sculler, what have you been doing?" I said, "I've just finished my 6th lager." He says, "Perfect man for the job. Can he do the media conference in Birmingham?" So there I sat after the Springbok lost against Japan, 6 lagers in. No wonder I was so calm. I mean, I looked at the press conference the other day. I was pretty much just going, "Sorry, boys, sorry. I couldn't have done it without the 6 beers, though."
It shows you there is a place for alcohol. We must tell the president. Yeah. There's a question I want to pose to both of you. You've both been in this very particular scenario now. Schalk, with our loss to Japan. Renee, in 2019, we lost our first game to the All Blacks as well. Now, this in itself brings an immense amount of pressure to a team. Schalk, you've mentioned it just now. To be honest, you sitting as a team, then you must understand, I lose another game, we're probably going home. Okay, you can't lose another game in this tournament. So how difficult is it to refocus from there? How does the team keep the faith? Because as Schalk said, you come there, we all believe we're going to win. We all have this, and you lose your first game. How do you refocus from there?
I think...
You go, Renee.
No, for me, I think about it, and I think that win or lose, everyone has their protocol and their process that you have to go through after the game, particularly for us as support staff. So it's almost as if you take your Sunday to recover and to regroup and to do, now in this World Cup, from 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, the guys would start downloading from Huddle the game and start analyzing. And we would have done recovery and medicals with the guys for 3 hours, the morning after the game. So that was usually our protocol on a Sunday if we played a Saturday. So this is exactly what happened after a loss or a win. The same process. obviously people are really not feeling great, but you as a support team, you want to push the guys up and make them not feel too bad. And then you've got that review session on a Monday. And obviously the review session after that New Zealand game was very long. And a lot of discussion was had, obviously, about how we handled the ref. Which, so for us at the end of that review session, I think we all felt a little bit more relaxed because now we had analyzed the game, we'd done our review of the game, and we'd known that these are the mistakes that we've made and these are the things we'd focus on in the future. And obviously, if you're superstitious, you're thinking, oh my gosh, no one's won the World Cup when they've lost a pool game. So you've got this at the back of your head, that we've lost this first game. But in retrospect, we knew that we had trained exceptionally hard leading up to Japan. We then arrived in Japan. We always planned we'd be the first team in Japan and the last team to leave. So we'd arrive in Japan. It was exceptionally humid. I mean, the sweat was dripping from us before you even got onto the pitch. So the guys trained in really harsh conditions. And I think there was a little bit of flatness besides the issues that we had with the ref. So, we sort of analyzed it, and then you start the next game.
Yes.
So almost, I sometimes think that the public or my family thinks, oh my gosh, the guys always say they focus on the next game. And I say, well, that is the truth, that you have to forget about it and you have to focus on the next game. And that's what you do. So by Monday afternoon, it's done. You've done your review and you're doing your preview of the attack and the defense, and you're off to the training to prepare for your next game.
Yes, absolutely. Skalk, I wouldn't want to have been in that Japan review session. I'm sure that was quite brutal.
No, it was brutal. I mean, grown men crying, obviously trying to catch up on your phone. But, when your wife sends you she normally doesn't send anything after game except, are you okay? And then all of a sudden you get like 1,000 messages from her saying, what's up? What's happening? How can you lose against Japan? You must have still booked my flight ticket for the quarterfinal. It's tricky to answer. But I guess where Renee's going to, World Cup, the pressure's, intensified, and what beats that pressure is not you as an individual. Sure, you've got, to make sure all your own ducks is in order. You've got to be well prepared. You've got to know where you've got to go. But the comfort is in your preparation, and the preparation beats the pressure. If you're unprepared, the moment's going to be too big. And if you rely on a moment of brilliance or someone trying to do something, that's not going to work. It's too hard. There's too much pressure. So, you find comfort in your coaching staff, you find comfort in your teammates, you find comfort in knowing exactly what's happening, what you've got to do. And at some stage in the week, the team's got to take ownership of the plan, so normally for me by Thursday, the team's got to understand what the plan is. And the good coaches have got that way to take the pressure off the players, although, expecting the highest standards from them. And I think, that's what Rassie got right with this team. It was a simple plan. Everyone knew the plan. Every single player probably trained it about 100 times in the game, in the week. And then by the game, you find comfort in that familiarity that you're not a fish out of water. You're with your teammates and we know exactly where we're going.
Yes. Skalk, I think an interesting thing to mention there as well. As South Africans, we've played in 3 finals and we've won all of them. So there is also something about the grit, I think, in our blood. But even looking in the 4 World Cups you were involved, you started off with the Staldraad debacle, and I'm not even going to go there. That wouldn't have gone very well from there. And then, of course, you won in 2007, and in 11 we got stuck with a Bryce Lawrence mess that could have really changed, because I thought we had a really good chance in that World Cup. And then, as you mentioned, 2015 we lost by 2 points to the All Blacks in the semi-final. Also a game that could have gone either way. That must sometimes give you a little bit of frustration that you think we actually had a chance of winning all 4 of those World Cups.
Well, me and Victor did all 4 of them, and the first one in 2003 we had no chance of winning. In the back of your mind, you think, maybe, but upon reflection, we had no chance. We lost against the All Blacks 3 points to 9 in Melbourne. And we didn't really have a shot. Although we were competitive, for sure we were competitive. Our preparation was just not conducive of winning something against, the best in the world. Then 2004, Jay came over and, his famous first speech that we're going to win it in 2007. and everything was geared towards 2007. Yes, we had a bit of a blip in 06, but I think, what that 06 blip did is sort of, got rid of certain players, unfortunately, that just wasn't going to make it to the World Cup, and it forced us to refocus. And maybe Jake realized, he's got to get help from outside. So, he had the masterstroke of bringing Eddie Jones in, who obviously lost in the final in 03. Then 11, obviously, I think it's the hardest game to forget about. I mean, it still irks me to this day, is the fact that we lost against Australia 11 points to 9. I think we actually had one of our best performances in a long time in that game, and unfortunately the scoreboard just didn't reflect that. Obviously the week game after that would have been the All Blacks. That was wobbling because they obviously lost Carter by that stage, and McCaw was hobbling around on a broken foot. So you never know. That's the one I think that I took the longest to get over. I mean, we've traveled back that night, so we lost. It was an evening game, and a couple of us, 4 of us, was on the aeroplane or on a bus to catch the aeroplane at 3 o'clock that morning. Got back and then pretty much got roped in by Western Province to play in the Currie Cup semi-final away against Lions, and lost that game as well. And then I was just over losing. I just went on a 5-week holiday. And then 15. 15, we had a really good team. We actually had a nice balance, but unfortunately our build-up didn't go according to plan. And, you set out as a coaching staff with a plan. And whenever you start changing that plan, yes, you can modify it, but if you start going completely off script, I think you find yourself chasing your tail. And that's what happened with us in 15. So the first 2 games, we also had a lot of players injured, coming back from injury. If you think about it, Victor was injured. Frans Vallo was injured. Dwayne Vermeulen was injured. Farid Aprio was injured. Who am I missing? John de Villiers was coming back. I think I might have mentioned him.
Yeah.
So the tricky thing about that is that the guys who played most of the games before the World Cup didn't actually go to the World Cup. If you think of me and Heinrich Brousseau, I think almost played every single test match before. I played every test match. But so, your build-up wasn't perfect. And, the big kicker for us came when we lost the game in Durban. We lost against Argentina in Durban, and they played an outstanding game, and we were, off by 5% on the day, probably due to our preparation and unknown. And then the squad was also massive. So we had a massive squad, and it only got trimmed out just before England. And as I mentioned, us as South African, everyone's so competitive. So you just imagine training. Now we've got 60 guys, the squad that goes to the World Cup's 30. The day before you leave, everyone still thinks they've got a chance. So no one really takes ownership of the position, because it's out of character for South Africans to, say, listen, this is mine until you've got it. You're still trying to accommodate everyone. So in 15, we did remarkably well. Actually, for me, it was one of the most enjoyable movements, after the Japan game. After that, to sit down, how a team can take ownership, how a couple of our senior players with the coaching staff sort of brought the team together and said, listen, we realize it's not going to be perfect. We're a very good side, and we can go a long way in this competition. And we fell just short and came third. So in the 4 World Cups, I've pretty much seen any outcome in every single preparation. I mean, Staldraad, I was boxing my teammates. Luckily we weren't doing that in 2015.
Absolutely. Renee, a question came in from quite a few people actually in the audience. They say a lot has been mentioned about the team culture during 2019. What was unique about the culture in the team, and what changes did Rassie bring?
So from my side, I think that the most important thing is that from the onset, there was transparency about what was required if you wanted to be part of the team. There was nothing, I think it's probably one of the hardest things for a coach is which I sometimes say, they don't know how to tell players what you need to do to be part of the team. And that was quite clear. It was said from the outset, if you can be as talented as as ever, but if you do not have the mindset and the vision that aligns with what's going on in the team, you will not be selected. And you needed to pay attention to all different areas. We started in 2018 with having a very, very poor reputation, South African rugby, globally. We were really sucked, the commentators were really speaking badly about us. We were not a threat in world rugby at that stage.
We were ranked 7th or something.
Exactly. And so that was really the footing that we started off with, saying, listen, this is what people are thinking of you, and you're going to have to change it. And it started off with saying, have we become entitled? Are we taking more from the game than we're giving? And that was a process that we all had to go through, irrespective of whether you're a player or support staff, to say, have I become entitled? Am I not taking ownership of this responsibility I have as being part of this brand? Or am I really just using this brand for my own benefit, And the classic thing, are you watching your followers and how your hair looks on your photos on the cover of magazines, or are you focused on actually improving yourself as a professional rugby player and prepping for that game? That preparation, as Skalk has mentioned, so crucial. Guys had to invest 12 hours a week on their own, just doing their analysis. That was besides the meetings and the training and the physio and the rehab. So there was a whole mind shift that I'm not going to be entitled. We'll call each other out on it. We will be accountable. All of us, we were 51 on tour. Everyone had that accountability. We all bought into it and were aligned. And yes, it was tricky. It took us, we were 21 weeks we were together. I mean, that think about your own colleagues and think if you had to deal with your colleagues for breakfast, lunch, and supper for 21 weeks. Well, it was 20 weeks, and we always told each other it's 21 weeks because we're going to have the trophy tour.
Okay.
And there'll be that, but that will be a party week. So that was no stress with that week. But that was really the difference I felt in changing the culture, and also from a hierarchy to a flat structure, where I felt as the physio, I could get onto that platform at the end of that, when we got our gold medals and feel that I was part of it, that I had an impact. I'm not Rassie Erasmus, I'm not Sia Khaleesi, but I also made a difference. And I could also stand on that stage and feel, and that's why it was so powerful. Our bomb squad, they were powerful. They knew they made a difference. They were on the bench, but they were just as important. The guys that didn't play as many games were just as important. Everyone felt that they had a contribution to make, which I think is very powerful for a team. So you don't create a virus where people feel, gosh, I'm not doing anything. I'm just hanging around here. But, even guys that were not playing had to do analysis of that opposition and present that to the team that was playing. So the success felt like it was a team success, which was very, very powerful for me.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. And guys, we're running out of time, but there's a couple more questions that I have to ask. Skalk, especially towards the beginning of your career, I think you scared a few referees with the physicality you brought to the game, and I think your hair made it look even worse. So there was a stage where they really liked to take to their pockets and send you off for a little rest. I mean, you weren't any stranger to the yellow, but I was surprised to see you got the most yellow card at Springbok.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite trivia questions. Obviously, myself and Bucky, or like you go to Butch James, or you always, everyone sort of refers to us. I'm probably right on top of the charts, but no, it's not me. I got 6, but Brian O'Banner got 7.
I was really quite amazed when I read that stat because, firstly, that it's a backline player, and secondly, a wing. I mean, it's not our style.
And I'm quite amazed that Brian O'Banner has kept so quiet about it. So, because normally, he's quite out there. He likes to post a bit of records, but he's never posted the yellow cards, and he always wants to blame me. I wouldn't be surprised that he's the one that sort of, posts sometimes that I was the dirtiest player. Let's get Brian up.
So, sorry, one last question, and I mean, I know you've had a terrible battle with the physical illness and injuries as well. I mean, I just want to hear from you. A lot of the audience also wants to know, when you left the hospital, now you've recovered, and I know it was a long journey. Was there any talk of you ever playing rugby again?
No, there wasn't. The focus was just quality of life. So I went in at 110 and I came out at 90 kgs. And the issue I had is, I lost a lot of spinal fluid through the cyst. So the cyst was, at the end, was filled with spinal fluid. And the life-threatening part was obviously the infection I had, which I got through exploratory operation. And then they had to remove the cyst because the next step for me would have been paralysis. So they had to do something about it. So if I got up, I sort of toppled over. I had no balance. So, yeah, I had no chance, really. And then I went back to Western Province because that's what and you want to do a bit of fitness. And predominantly, entailed walking, and then started jogging around. I would often leave here. I'm right at the foot of the mountain here. Leave here and walk to Camps Bay for a cup of coffee and walk back. Which is about a 40k walk. It's probably at 8 hours, but I had nothing better to do. It was almost like this last lockdown, but where you've got a diary full of nice travel plans, and then it just gets it gets blown out the water. And actually, what triggered me is after 4 months, I went back to my neurologist, neurosurgeon. And I just asked the question, listen, I'm feeling good. I'm reasonably fit. I'm running around the mountain here. Can I play rugby? And he said, well, you can play rugby again, but you'll never be Skalk Burger. And underneath the placid facade, there's a fierce competitor there. And something just triggered me. And I was like, I'll show you. I'll show you. Get back. Obviously the conversation I had to have with my wife to let me play rugby. I mean, that's got to be censored. I can't really tell that story online, but she wasn't the biggest fan of the decision. And then then you've got to be patient. The hard thing about coming back is things you used to do and take for granted, like your physical strength, your inherent fitness. That just takes forever to come back. I used to expend so much energy when I just came back, because obviously I was a little bit lighter. I've lost that base fitness because I was pretty much in bed for 5 months and lost 20 kilograms, and those things just doesn't come back overnight. And I remember, that I came back, and towards the end of 2013 played for the Barbarians, and Steve Hansen was coach. And up until that stage, I made a few cameo appearances. I missed basically 2 years of rugby, but made a few cameo appearances in the Currie Cup for Western Province. And he said, you're playing 80 minutes, you're starting at number 7, which is obviously their open side, so number 6 in South Africa. We played against Fiji in an absolute storm, and that sort of just proved to me that I've got it. And then luckily for me, it worked out.
Yeah, I don't think it's all luck. It's amazing. I mean, you won the Laureus Award for International Comeback the year after that. That's amazing, guys. I'm so thankful for having had you here. The audience have loved it. Thank you for your insights. You are two special human beings, both of you. Congratulations again on all your achievements. And it's really been a pleasure talking to you guys. I just want to finish off. Pleasure.
Thank you, Yaku.
Well done, Renee.
Fantastic. So in our quest to reach 150,000 clients by 2025, my hope today is that a few of you also believe that specialists using the right tools for the right time on a journey to adapt to change in order to grow is the way forward. And then we're all on the same page. We'd love then to work with your team to do a free, no obligation audit on your existing employee benefits offering to see how we can help make a difference and help your employees also achieve their own aspirations. Who knows? You might be very surprised at the audit results that we can get for you. Just click below on the button here, right there somewhere. Just have a click there. We'll get in touch with you. Or if you want to refer us to someone, we'd gladly go and have a chat with them. Just click on the button and we'll get your details from there. Everybody have a fantastic day, and thank you so much for listening in. Goodbye.